It can often become quite taxing to help other people. So I'm going to suggest a little tip here to help you guys out. So in the 1980s, William Miller came out with something called motivational interviewing. And he came out with this because when he was working with problematic drinkers, there was a prevailing sentiment that these drinkers were recalcitrant, they were stubborn, obnoxious, and often when you try to help them, they would just be in denial, and then they thought that to get through to these drinkers, you had to try and get past their pathological resistance with force, right? But William Miller came up with this idea that the reason these drinkers were being like this, being so stubborn to help from the outside, was because of the structure of the conversation, the way they were being approached. So I'm going to throw some concepts out at you guys to learn. The number one is the writing reflex. The writing reflex. Not writing as in like writing with a pen, but the reflex to just set someone right immediately. Okay? Because when you see someone having a problem, your instant response, your reflex, your instinct is just to set them promptly on the right track. The problem with this is if someone is ambivalent about change, in their minds they're going to have two sides. Both one side will be pro change, they'll have arguments for making the change, and the other side will be things in support of sustaining or maintaining the status quo. Okay, they're ambivalent, they're not sure yet, they haven't mustered up the motivation to go one way or the other yet. Now, if someone from the outside falls victim to this writing reflex and just automatically starts offering suggestions and starts dictating what they should do, then that person is going to, well, what do you guys think you'll get from the other person? It's the first thing you'll hear is yes, but, right? And that's the last thing you want that person saying, because when that person starts offering up these objections and offering up the other side, the thing is humans are more prone to taking their own opinions more seriously. So if you're saying something and I'm saying something, I'm going to take my opinions as holding more weight. Okay, so if the whole conversation is just you dictating to me what I should do and me saying yes, but what about this? What about this? What about this problem? Or why might it not be a good idea for me to change whatever? If I'm the one offering these rebuttals, then by the end of the conversation, the whole conversation for half an hour or an hour, I've been arguing in favor of not changing, of sustaining, of maintaining the status quo. And you've been the one trying to get me to change, okay? So what you want in motivational interviewing is to get that person to be making the pro-change statements, okay? So you kind of have to put that writing reflex, the urge to set someone right, kind of on the back seat, okay? Try not to let it govern the conversation. You want that person to make the pro-change statements so that by the end of the conversation, when they reflect on the 1 hour, they're gonna have kind of convinced themselves into making the change, okay? And I'm pretty sure one thing that factors into this is cognitive dissonance, right? If you've been talking for an hour about making change, it's your identity is going to kind of be consistent with what you've said. And we've seen this in studies. For example, I remember reading this famous study in social psychology about they made students write an essay on why they should wake up at 6 a.m. And then it turned out they actually started waking up earlier because their behavior had to try and stay consistent with what they'd said. This has been shown in countless studies, right? So make that person make these pro-change statements, and your conversation style, your helping style, rather than it being dictating, it should be guiding, okay? So in a future video, I'll give you the how of motivational interviewing, what are the core motivational processes. I wanted to present it in this video, but I want to finish the book first when I have time. Then I'll give you the how to accomplish this. Just as like a little tidbit though, one example is when someone's talking, you can make little statements that kind of summarize or make a guess at what they meant. Okay, so if you let's say tell me your boyfriend broke up with you or something, I'll be like, okay, and you're upset that your boyfriend broke up with you, right? Like I'll kind of make a guess as to what the sentiment behind what you're saying is, and then you'll keep talking, but in doing this, I can kind of guide you and emphasize where we should go with this conversation, okay? But I'll get into the meat of that later, these how to motivationally interview someone. And I think this is a skill that everyone needs to pick up. I'm a big believer that a lot of these lower level mental problems, I think, can be fixed in the community if we're just there for each other. I think we've kind of lost that social capital because, and I'm not going to knock therapy again for this, but it's just when you have a profession built around something, there's kind of an incentive to esoterize that thing so that it kind of becomes out of the hands of the people, so that you can kind of justify that profession being there. For example, if you're a personal trainer, you're gonna want to sustain your income. You're gonna want to sustain your profession. So it's in your best interest to keep the problem going. Okay. And so when I look at psychology, I read these psychology books, they approach it in such an esoteric manner that people think, okay, I can't help anyone anymore because they might kill themselves. These concepts are too hard. This is a very hard thing. Let's leave therapy to the professionals. But I think at these lower level skills, we can all learn, like how to talk to someone, how to help someone change, how to be there for our friend. And honestly, I've seen so many people fall into this trap where someone expresses a problem. Let's say they're having a problem with binge eating or something. The first instinct is, okay, do this, do this, do this, practice acceptance, drink more water before meals or whatever. And then that person's like, okay, but what about this? I've tried this and I keep running into these problems or whatever, right? Like their first instinct is to offer up the rebuttal. And this is a very natural, rational thing to do. This is how debate works. But this is not what you want when you're trying to help someone. You don't want them to be making all the anti-change statements or the sustain talk. You want them to be making the pro-change statements. So you gotta kind of evoke that from them. You gotta guide them through the conversation into making those pro-change statements themselves so that they're convincing themselves. Okay, so look up motivational interviewing. I think it's a beautiful thing for Miller to have created in the 1980s. And yeah, I'll talk more about this in another video. Thanks.